If everything can be paused, I will ask the spiritual court to put death on hold, so we can have time to breathe, and the rain of tears shall stop.
I have an appeal to the Supreme Court of Justice and Truth. Your mediation is necessary. Pause everything for a moment. In this video, I just want to talk about 82 years of freedom. What went wrong? What happened? This is not even like 32 years of real freedom, but this is the 32 years of fake freedom in South Africa. Everything was compromised. That is why I always say politics is a scam, and politics is a system of the oppressor. They've created everything to oppress and rule. We can talk about capitalism and all these other isms. They are not African, but Africans are talking about these isms daily. They even master them, even in their studies. When they study political science, this is what they master. When they study law, when they study everything, this is what they master. When they debate, when they do activism out there, this is what they master. Everybody wants to master the system of the master. 82 years. The freedom is fake. The freedom is fake. I was fortunate to realize this around 2002. That was the time when I realized that no, there was something wrong about this freedom. And many years later, I can witness what I predicted long time ago in 2002. This freedom is fake. But my solution currently right now, I can say, when it comes to solutions, I don't agree with a lot of people. Why? Because around 1910 or 1911 or 1912, if I'm not mistaken, South Africa was created. South Africa was created for the masters. And when South Africa got its independence around 1960 something, because these guys were oppressing one another, because you know how the system works and you know how they operate sometimes. So they got their own independence. Like for an example, in 1960 something, in other words, the Boers, because all along the Boers were still running the business under the leadership or under the dictatorship, or maybe, let me not say dictatorship, but under the leadership of Britain. So they got their own independence around maybe 50s or 60s, because they started doing their own thing, oppressing Bantu people in their own way as well. Then many years later after that, in 1994, we Bantu people, then we got an opportunity to say, you know what, let's go and cast our votes for the first time. But if you can go back in the 1800s, our forefathers even in the 1700s, our forefathers were fighting for one thing. We're fighting for the land, because the land is the power. And that is why many people these days, they get offended the moment you talk about land. They'll tell you that you don't know anything about land, when in reality, they found our forefathers running businesses, running factories here before colonialism. But that history was gone down. That is why I always say the truth has been gunned down, because nobody cares. Our forefathers were not fighting to vote. In other words, this is a proof that the political system is not our system, but is the system of the West. So that is why we need to be careful all the time whenever we talk about the politics, or we always say you have a freedom to vote. Yes, people may say I have a freedom to vote, but again, I have a freedom to decide and to choose to say, you know what, this voting system hasn't done anything for about 32 years. The voting system hasn't done anything for 32 years. Probably people who have benefited are those who are in control of economy, because they are still benefiting even today. Those who oppressed our forefathers, they are still benefiting today. And those who are coming from other countries in order to sell powder, in order to do trafficking and etc., probably they are benefiting in these 32 years of fake freedom. This is fake freedom. Why I say this is because of corruption. Number one, this is the first point that I want to talk about. And you have to understand that a small hole, not fixed on time, becomes a big hole, much more difficult to deal with. So whenever we talk about corruption, corruption is not something new amongst Bantu people. Corruption has been there maybe even in the 60s, even in the 50s, even in 1994, because the 1994 establishment or 1994 implementation strategy was based on corruption. In other words, other people were bribed. Probably South Africa or our people would have gotten freedom earlier than 1994, before 1994. But I think it didn't happen that way because of corruption. Why? Because we have this tendency of getting bribed. Yes, I understand that we have lost our identity, we have lost everything, but it's time for us to recover and understand that material things cannot be more valuable than your dignity, your integrity, who you are, your identity. Material things can, in other words, wealth, material things cannot, because in most cases, we make this mistake of associating ourselves with material things. Just because I have a house, just because I have this car, just because I have these qualifications, then I am smart. That's when you feel like you can compete with people of other races. That's when you feel confident because you have something, just because you have a qualification and etc. That is why it's easy for us to be bribed, because sometimes bribery is not just to give you money. In other words, sometimes bribery is to accept something that will keep your people under poverty. This is what happened in 1994. Most of our leaders chose luxury. They chose wealth over identity. They chose wealth, material things, over their own integrity. That is why they cannot be respected by other groups of people. Various races all over the world can't respect you because of your leaders, because your leaders can easily get bribed. You have to understand that this whole thing is also spiritual. This whole thing is also spiritual. Bribery is also spiritual. In other words, if you accept bribes, if you want people to bribe you, spiritually you have already lost the battle. That is why we are still suffering even today. After 32 years, people are suffering. People are suffering. Even those men, even those who have been, like, for an example, accepting bribes in the 90s, that money is gone, most of them. Those who are working for government, that money is gone. And their children right now are suffering. Why? Because we Bantu, we have a problem of thinking about today. We think about today. As long as people can see me, as long as my people can see me, that I'm intelligent, that I have graduated, that I have a car, I have a nice house, I can go on holidays, I can afford my life. This is our problem. This is our problem. We don't think about tomorrow. That is why we have other people who are like, we have to take over Western Cape. They're like, in other words, they have a chance to take over Western Cape. Then you ask yourself, how can an old man at the age of 60, at the age of 70, support this thing of taking over Western Cape so that it can be independent? You ask yourself, what is happening? It's because they don't think about today. They think about maybe the coming 50 years or the coming 100 years. This is what they always think about. In other words, they think ahead. They think about tomorrow. They don't think just about today. They don't just think about today. I know some people may come with scriptures and say, don't worry about tomorrow. I get that. I get that. But the most important thing is that we should stop this tendency of, like, for an example, thinking about today only. We don't think about our children, because the children of these politicians who sold out, their grandchildren will suffer. They are going to suffer as well, because those billions, as time goes by, everything will vanish. Everything will vanish. Those billions are not guaranteed. So that is why it's important for you as an individual to prioritize your integrity. Integrity is very important, because you cannot just go to the store and buy it. There are people who will respect you even if you don't have money, but they will respect you because of your integrity. Because you refused to sell your soul. Yes, because you refused to sell your soul. As a result, they'll respect you. That's integrity. That's integrity. The likes of Chris Hani. Some people may say he died a painful death. But look at that integrity. This is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. So corruption is not something new. So this freedom of 1994 is founded upon corruption. Why? Because in 1910, this South Africa of Britain was founded upon corruption. In order to, like, manipulate our minds, in order to steal our identity, in order to steal everything, to steal the land and everything. That is why even today, majority of the land is in the hands of South Africa. The South Africa that was established not by our forefathers, but by the oppressor, by the colonizer. In 1994, that system was not destroyed. That foundation was not destroyed, but instead we build upon that particular foundation. And that was a big mistake that we made. That was a big mistake which we as people, we made. So as you see these politicians being corrupt, like promising you heaven and earth, then at the end of the day, they are not doing anything. In other words, it's because South Africa, this 1994 freedom is rooted or is founded upon lies, is founded upon manipulation, is founded upon corruption, is founded upon, like for an example, compromise. That is why this South Africa you live in is where it is today. It's not going anywhere. Why? Is because there's no truth, as there's no accountability. They do as they please. The second thing that I would like to talk about is nepotism. The reason you see government departments deteriorating, people who are working there are corrupt. They don't have any skill. In other words, they are not even willing to learn. They are not in competition with anyone. Why? Because they got there through their cousins, through someone who has power. But even though they have power, they don't know what they are doing. That is why it's easy for them to sell their own integrity. Why? Because they don't value the land. They don't value the resources of the state. They don't understand. So that is why it's easy for them to be bribed. We have a problem in government departments. Right now, we have a problem of Home Affairs that is corrupt. We have a problem of Labor Department that is corrupt. The bigger problem here, we have a problem of nepotism. That is why even when it comes to our economic change, nothing is happening. Even when the funds are there, even when these people are given, like for an example, power to do something or ability to do something, but they are not using that particular privilege. They're not using that particular power. Why? Because they don't know what to do with the budget they have. The only thing they can master is to be corrupt. So they will hire their own cousins, people who will submit to them, people who will accept whatever they do, all shenanigans they do. So that is why we have a problem of a country that is not developing. Instead of developing, is deteriorating. In other words, we can talk about government departments, we can talk about municipalities. These municipalities can't even get a clean audit. These departments are a mess. Why? It's because we have people who are not even trying. I understand maybe, like for an example, politicians, that politicians are corrupt, that politicians are this and that. But even our people who work in these departments, the leaders of these departments or the managers in these departments, they don't hire people who are skilled. In other words, the HR is not hiring people who are skilled. They hire based on who is associated with who. Then at the end of the day, you will find people without a skill running a department like Home Affairs or running a department like Labor. All of them don't know anything because it's all about who is associated with who. Or probably you can maybe give me money as a result of corruption. Give me money, then I will I will approve maybe your CV or will hire you. We have a problem of nepotism or favoritism. That is why these departments are collapsing. You cannot give a 6-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old a responsibility to drive a car. You can't do that. You can't do that. This is what is happening in these departments. People who are supposed to be listening, people who are supposed to be giving instructions, they give instructions. People who are supposed to be led, they are leading. That is why right now we have a problem of people who are like, they are not satisfied. It's like, even though they earn a salary, but it's like they are not satisfied. But you have to understand one thing. Why this is happening is because the politicians are corrupt. The politics are running everything. So they want people who don't know anything, so that in the future they can say, we gave you everything, we gave you power, but look, you failed. That is why I'm saying integrity is very important. You have to respect yourself. You have to respect yourself. Sometimes you have to accept your situation, that you don't have a car, that you don't have a house, than to accumulate those things or get those things through corruption. That's not a good thing. I know some people may not understand me right now, but they will understand me later when it's time for them to reap the results of taking bribes. Because sometimes it's not about you going to prison, but you'll have that moment in your bedroom and you'll be like, you know what? I messed up. You cannot sell your integrity. You cannot sell your integrity. So now the politicians are controlling all these departments because they know that the people who are running these departments, they don't know anything and they cannot hold the politicians accountable. That is why today we have a problem of people who enter into the country illegally, people who have, like for an example, questionable permits to be here in South Africa. This is not about hate. This is about accountability. This is about love. This is about truth. This is about the security of the country. It's because in these departments, you have a lot of people who are corrupt, working hand in hand with the politicians. And now, since they work hand in hand with the politicians, they've created their own system. So they don't want anyone from outside to come and join the system and be in these departments because they might be exposed. So that is why whenever they hire, they want to hire people who are closer. Number 3, without any waste of time, I want to talk about drug and alcohol abuse. Before I can talk about people who are selling powder, I just want to say, my people, Bantu, you need to be very careful. You have to know your history. History is very important. We have a history of politics. We have the history of the land. We have the history of technology. We have the history of social media. We have the history of many things. And we also have a history of alcohol. We have a history of alcohol. Yes, other people may criticize you. Other people may tell you that because you're drinking alcohol, you're going to hell and etc. I'm not there. I'm not talking about that. You have to know the history of alcohol. In other words, in these 32 years of this freedom, they made sure that alcohol is available to everyone, irregardless of the circumstances, irregardless of what is happening. It's a system. This is how it works. Why? Because if you are addicted to something, at the end of the day, no matter how beautiful that thing is, but if you are addicted to something, at the end of the day, that addiction will overpower you and destroy you. This is what is happening to our youth, to our young people. Because you won't think about the future. You won't think about anything. This is what they want. This is the system. This is how the system operates. Because the more you're focused, the more you're busy on entertainment, then they can be busy with other things. Then we have the washing powder. The purpose of the washing powder is just to wash your brain. Is just to wash your brain because it's quicker than alcohol. Washing powder is much quicker. So that is why they allow it. Because sometimes I ask myself, where do they manufacture all these things? Where do they manufacture? Because if there's a factory, you have to know what this factory is all about. If there's any business, you have to know, as government, what is this business all about? Then if you have people who have a powder that is worth billions, then you ask yourself, how did they manufacture this whole thing and where? This 32 years is just fake. All these things are planted. They are doing something to you. That is why don't sell your integrity. Don't allow entertainment. Yes, entertainment sometimes it can be good to say, you know what, maybe let me just go out there and entertain myself. But here's the thing. Don't sell your integrity through all these things. The other thing, probably is the fourth thing that I would like to talk about. I just want to talk about unemployment. Unemployment. Right now, many people are protesting because of unemployment, because the rate of unemployment is very high. In 1994, don't be surprised when these people are fighting, brothers and sisters are fighting, they're like, you know what, we want to take over right now. It's because in 1994, they were promised that these factories, that these companies would hire them. So that is why right now, if these companies start hiring people who are not documented, hiring people not according to visa laws, then people will be frustrated because they were promised by the very same system in 1994 that you will have jobs. You will have jobs. Now they come, they're like, no, those are just crumbs. Those jobs are not good jobs for you. But in 1994, they were promised that you will work for these companies. You will work for these companies. And right now, they are like, we have to think we are lazy, something like that. You can have a plan, but as long as you are not connected with a system, there's absolutely nothing you can do. There are many people who have good inventions, who have good plans, but nobody is helping them. Nobody is trying to associate with them, because the moment you send your application, they review it, and then they are like, you know what? Let's ignore this fool. Why? Because they call you a fool, but on a public TV, they will say, our people. That's how they act. So it's important for people to wake up. Politics will never help you. Politics will never help you. Because these people don't care. They'll only come to you when you are, like for an example, when they need you. That's when they will come to you, because they need you to vote for them. But at the end of the day, you can tell that they don't care. The unemployment is high. And when the unemployment is high, it makes people to be frustrated. It makes people to easily fall for powder, alcohol, and many other things, including crime as well. And the other thing that I would like to talk about is service delivery. When it comes to service delivery, forget about service delivery. This whole thing was planned. Before 1994. That is why I'm like, 1994 was founded upon lies. So everything is just a lie. They've created everything. Everything was created. You have to understand that the colonizer is very strategic. The colonizer came up with a strategy to say, you know what? I want people who don't know anything. That is why in your local townships, local cities, something like that, you don't receive an appropriate service delivery. And the infrastructure is collapsing. You know why? It's because the politics is running everything. Politics is running all these departments. People who should be running all these things is people who don't know, or people who don't care. If you know, you know, but you shouldn't care. If you don't know, then you are also a suitable candidate to become like a municipal manager, to become like a top guy when it comes to these departments. Why? Because the aim is to collapse everything, so that at the end of the day you can say, we have failed. So that at the end of the day, we can blame one another and say, we have failed. Then let's bring them back. Because this is what a lot of people are saying on social media. They are like, let's bring them back. This is what they are saying. They're like, let's bring them back. You ask yourself, what's happening? I don't want to even talk about leadership, because we don't have leaders. We can talk about mayors, we can talk about councillors, these people don't care, they don't know anything, they are cruel. It's like they come from the same family where cruelty is the main agenda. This is where these people come from. All of them don't care. They act like they've adopted the style of the colonizer, those fake smiles, as if they care. But deep down in their hearts, they don't care. This is a strategy just to fool you, the strategy to keep you asleep. Everything is ran by politics. Everything from top to bottom, that councillor is controlled by the political agenda. There's absolutely nothing you can do. That is why I've reached the point to say the one who has created all of us is the one who's supposed to rescue us. And if we cannot be rescued, there's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. Probably unless we come together. But we cannot come together. It is very difficult for us to come together. As Bantu here in South Africa, it's very difficult. Why? It's because sometimes we don't want to focus on real problems. Sometimes we want to run away from the real problems. Then as a result, we get separated, we get divided. But or sometimes when others focus on real problems, others, they miss the context. Then as a result, why? Because we were divided by the colonizer. You have to understand that to destroy is easy, but to build is very difficult. In other words, you can destroy a house in one day, but to build it is not going to take you a day. It's going to take you time. That is why coming together right now is something which is very important, because this is our last tool that we can use. But our problem, we still believe in the colonized. We still trust in the colonized. We still want to bring the colonizer in everything we do because we love the colonizer. At the end of the day, it becomes difficult for us to solve our own problems. Why? Because we believe in the colonizer. We love the colonizer. We love the system. At the end of the day, we're fighting against the system, but we are using the resources of the system, the tools of the system. We're being used by the system, and we follow the system. This is the problem. I hope one day we'll stand up and walk toward. Admit that I don't know anything. I don't know everything. Somebody can come and lead you. Just accept. Just accept it. Just accept that we should not, for an example, be divided by the things that don't matter that much. Because unity is about integrity. It's about Ubuntu. It's about our identity. It's about who we are. All those things should bring us together. But the more we follow the politicians, is the more we get separated. But at the end of the day, these politicians, they call each other. They visit one another while we are separated. Before we can talk about educational plan, before we can come with all these other things, because we always differ, we need to first come with one tool, which is very powerful: unity. if you bring this tool, unity, you kick politicians aside, you kick the colonizer outside, and you make sure that anyone who is a disturbance, you also put him or her outside, then unity will work. But unity requires one thing. You have to know your identity. You have to know your integrity. You need to respect yourself. You need to respect yourself. Because the moment you respect yourself, the moment we become united, then someone, the colonizer or a politician, will come with a bag of money. And the one who will focus on money is going to split that unity.
If everything can be paused, I will ask the spiritual court to put death on hold so we can have time to breathe, and the rain of tears shall stop.
I have an appeal to the Supreme Court of Justice and Truth. Your mediation is necessary. Pause everything for a moment.